We are in a series called This Is Important to Us. And it's a series about looking forward. And it's a series on what we value. It's not about our values, but it's about what we value. What is our DNA? What makes us up? And a couple of weeks ago, I shared on vision and purpose and the direction we're going. And then we heard from Jono, who shared a beautiful message on fun. Having a flash mob in church, giving our Christmas carols is a bit of fun, right? Yeah. Do you know, in that Christmas service that we do, we can invite our neighbours, we can boldly invite anybody out there because Christmas is an opportunity. I believe Christmas is a free hit. It's a free hit. When you say to people, come to a Christmas carols, it's kind of like this free hit. They will, I can tell you now, they will feel the presence of God in this place. Because we will sing some Christmas carols and they will know that Jesus Christ was born on that day. Next week, we're going to be looking at the value or what we value of prayer. I feel that there's a very powerful message coming in prayer, and instantly we can go, oh, that'll be a little bit boring because it's prayer. Prayer is the foundation of who we are. And this week, leading up to that, we're going to have 3 opportunities to gather together in prayer. Because praying by ourselves is good, and you know, I find a chair at home where I have my time, I do my beach walks, but there's something very special when 2 or 3 are gathered together. So Monday, tomorrow night at 5:15, if the weather's good, we'll be out on the lawn. If it's not, we'll be in the atrium. Tuesday morning at 7:15 in the morning, so if you're an early morning person, and then again Wednesday night at 5:15. 3 separate opportunities. I encourage you to make one of them. Change your calendar, get off work 15 minutes early, whatever you need to do, come and spend prayer. Now here's the thing, you do not have to be a great orator or be, I'm going to have to do some sort of corporate prayer. That's not what it's about. It's about getting together in the body of Christ because there's something that comes off others when they pray. Often you can just be there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and there is this beautiful feeling as you hear others pray. So I encourage you to come into that space. Today we are going to touch on something a little bit different. And it's an area of our faith that is somewhat polarizing. And that is to comprehend that God is so interested and cares for us so much that He would consider hearing our prayers and taking situations that in the natural seem impossible and making them possible. Miracles. It's polarizing. And at the end of the service today, I'm actually going to put this out there now. At the end of the service today, I'm going to ask our cafe team, our serving team, not to go as soon as we have ministry time, but I want you to stay in here. If that means that people wait 5 more minutes for a coffee, I'm okay with that. Our Heavenly Father waits all the time for us. Because I believe that today there will be significant moments where people will be set free. That there will be breakthroughs physically, mentally, and in areas of our life that have held us back. You see, we often look at healing as being, well, I've got something wrong with me and I need to get well and I'm going to walk out the door and I'm completely well. Often it's a mental thing that we need to work through. Often it is a relationship thing that has broken down and caused us fatigue and anxiety and brokenness. And I believe that God is the God who's looking to make the impossible possible. Although we read hundreds of miracles occurring in the scriptures, they can often seem like fairy tales. And that's why it's so polarizing to speak about it. They can often seem like they're a feel-good story that, happened in a galaxy far, far away. And as it relates to our life, it kind of seems like when God was handing out miracles, that we were stuck in the toilet and we missed out. That when God was handing out healing miracles, or when God was handing out miracles, that He kind of, was going along the line and He was handing them out, but we've been crying out for years and years, and somehow He's missed us. Somehow he hasn't seen us. And so we end up with this question of, is God really interested in me? I've seen him heal others, but is he really interested in me? I mean, I have a faith, but there's 7 billion other people on the earth. Does God know that I'm suffering? Does God know that I wake up every morning and my back is so bad that I can barely get out of bed? Does God even know that I exist? It's not that question that I want to tackle this morning. But when our lives are unexpectedly interrupted by sickness or by a situation that occurs, that feeling of insignificance can strike us. Even King David posed exactly those thoughts. In Psalm 8, he said, when I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you set in place, what are mere mortals that you should even think about them? Human beings that you should even care about them. Then he says this. He says, yet you made them, you made us only a little lower than God. And then you crowned us with glory and honor. Does God care for us? Well, he crowned us with glory and honor, dignity and worth. And he must care for us somewhat because he went a step further and then put us in charge of everything else on earth. But herein lies a challenge. It's almost like we can read that scripture that the authority of God has graciously given us and take it to mean that we don't need God anymore. Because in a westernized culture, we can fix it ourselves. It's like we've grown up and we don't need God. That we can take care of the situation. What offended me most in the recent TV interviews was the accusation that as a movement, we would dare to believe that you can buy yourself a miracle. That you could buy impossibility. That we don't need God in the equation. Because somehow, along our journey and in our intelligence, we've worked out how to bypass God. In 1 Peter 5, 6-7, it says, so humble yourselves under the mighty power of God. And at the right time, he will lift you up in honor. Then it says, give all your worries and cares to God. Why? Because he cares about you. Let me be very clear. A miracle is not a miracle unless God is involved. You see, the Israelites didn't walk through this wall of water, or this sea of water on dry land because they had built a dam upstream because they had great engineers. They did so because God created a possibility in a situation that seemed impossible. A crowd of 5,000 people didn't all of a sudden eat everything they need because they found a whole heap of barbecues out the back and a butcher that was open. They ate all that they were needed and had 12 basketfuls left over because God turned what was an impossible situation into possible. A widow down to her last meal didn't end up with a supply of oil and water because she all of a sudden found the back door open to her neighbour's house and could instantly just keep filling up her jars each time. No, she saw a miracle occur right before her very own eyes because she trusted God and was obedient with what little she had. As you may have seen on our social pages this week, today we are going to hear the story of Gemma. A young woman who found herself in a situation where her life was interrupted. Her dreams temporarily shattered by what is a debilitating, horrible sickness. I'm aware that what we share today is potentially very difficult for some to hear, and that some may even be going through the same scenario. But we're believing, as Gemma and I have met and as our spiritual team have been praying for this, that Gemma's story and the boldness and the courage she delivers it with will bring a light to those who are suffering. There's a story found in the Gospels that speaks of a woman who experienced an incredible interruption in her own life that would last for 12 years. We don't know her life story before that, but we know that as a result of her sickness, she had lost a great deal. She lost control of her body. She lost control of her identity. Don't you know when someone's sick, they don't even know your name, they just say, oh, that's that woman who's sick. She'd lost an element of certainty. You see, with a chronic illness, everything becomes contingent upon the condition. She'd lost her place in society. She'd lost her resources. We read that she'd spent all she had. She was financially bankrupt, she was emotionally spent, and she was physically weak. And maybe the most challenging of all can be the fear of losing hope. This woman had been sick for 12 years and was in the natural completely broken. But deep inside, as we read the story, we read that she maintained a faith and a hope that she would get well. You can just imagine her coming up behind the crowd. Just touch him. If I can just touch him. On the head? No, that would be irreverent. On the hand? No, that would be far too familiar. But there can't be any damage done if I just touch his robes. In verse 27 it says she had heard about Jesus, so she came behind him through the crowds and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robes, I will be healed. In the midst of a season of despair and nothing, this woman had a faith that she would be healed. I'm going to ask you to put your hands together as we invite Gemma up onto the stage. Oh, it is Christmas time. Come on.
Oh,
My
presents.
my present. Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. Gemma,
Shaun,
great to have you here.
thank you.
You're wearing yellow.
Yes, it is my favourite colour.
Was it always your favourite colour?
Yeah, when I was 5, I got my own bedroom and I asked Dad asked me what colour I wanted and I said Lello.
Lello. Yeah.
He opened up the can and was like, it's pink. And I'm here looking at it going, but it's yellow.
Did you drink mellow Lello? Anyway,
No.
that's an old person's joke. Gemma, you are a 27-year-old, fully healthy woman, married to Troy for the past 6 years. You work in a great career with plenty of opportunities ahead of you, believing one day for a family, the white picket fence, the dog, the cat, the goldfish. And then suddenly in January last year, your life was interrupted. Can you tell us about that moment standing in your bathroom in January last year?
Yeah, so I was just drying off one day and came across a lump and I was like, oh, that doesn't seem like it should be there. But I'd never been one of these women who was very good at, checking all the spots and everything. But I just had this feeling that this wasn't good. I hoped it was all clear, but it was scary. And I think I called Troy and I'm like, can you feel this lump? And he was like, oh, maybe there's something there. And so I had a doctor's appointment scheduled for a few weeks' time anyway. And so when I mentioned it to her, she had a check, and I was really blessed actually because she used to work at a breast clinic in Brisbane, and so she didn't get there and say, no, you're too young, it's nothing. She sent me for tests and unfortunately it was cancer.
Did you go straight away for the test?
No, she sent me for an ultrasound, and I work in politics, and I'd been asked to work on the state campaign last year, and I was like, I do not have time for that right now. So I put it off until after the campaign. It wasn't too long. I wasn't going to be one of these people who ignorance is bliss.
But there's something about that, Gemma, in that, and when we met over the last couple of weeks, we talk about the thing is that we don't have time for sickness. I've got things to do. I've got a journey ahead of me. I've got my plans before me. We don't have time for sickness.
No, I did not. Work is busy. My boss is a hard worker, and therefore I have to work hard. Troy and I are busy in life, and it just was not something that it was not on my radar.
So Gemma, at 27, you've just used the C word, cancer. I want you to share with us what it was when you were in the specialist room, sitting there, hoping, praying, believing, and then she shares with you that news.
Yeah, I think time stood still in that moment, and it felt like it wasn't even me. Troy and I had been talking in the waiting room about, renovating our laundry and normal things. And then in that moment, when she said the test results has shown a malignant tumour, I have always loved words, but in that moment, all my comprehension was gone, and I think I was just staring at her like, did I actually hear you right? And she had to say, it's cancer. And I just broke. And Troy was being very strong next to me, even though that was pretty tough. And I just still sometimes can't even believe that was said to me.
The words were said to you. Right at that time, did you blame God? Were you angry at God?
I think in that moment I was just so confused. Why was this happening to me? I'd been, lived a healthy life. I didn't drink much. I didn't ever smoke. Never did any drugs or anything like that. So I think I was a little bit angry in that moment. And I just didn't know why. I felt really alone.
Did you ask the question, why me, God?
Oh, yeah. I definitely did. Many times. I still sometimes feel like I do.
So you've got the news. The doctor's told you the news. You're sitting there. What is the first thing going through your mind? Am I going to die from this?
I don't know that I ever thought that I would die from it. My life was just suddenly interrupted. And my first thought actually, besides, okay, where do we go from here? I just felt God say to me, I know who goes before me. I know who stands beside. The God of angel armies is always by my side. And that was just so clear. And actually, when I got home, one of my sisters, I'm one of 4 girls, she sent me a text message with those exact words.
She didn't know?
She didn't know. I mean, she knew about the cancer at that point, but she didn't know that I'd had that moment in the doctor's.
You shared with me, Gemma, because this is your story, but it's also Troy's story, your husband, that he was brave and bold as he's sitting there, and then he had to make the phone call. Was it to your mum?
Yeah, to Mum. She actually knew when it was Troy calling, not me, what it was. But we'd gone out to the car and I was sitting in there, and Troy got out and called Mum, and he just went to water, He couldn't hold it in anymore.
Did that break you?
Yeah, more. It was tough because he's always been someone, he feels very deeply, but is always wanting to be strong and brave, particularly when I'm struggling.
Could I say that he wanted to fix it?
Yeah, he's a builder. He likes to fix things. He could not fix this. And to know that he had no control, I think was really hard on him, on both of us.
You use that word, and you used that when we met during the week, of he had no control. Did you feel out of control of your body?
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like it had rebelled against me. I couldn't understand why on earth this would happen. And yeah, I felt broken. I felt really broken. I was going to lose my hair, and there were different surgery options, but I did choose to go with a double mastectomy, and so I was going to lose these parts of me that I felt were things that I identified me, especially my hair. I had really long, straight hair before. Now I've got this chemo curl. And yeah, it's weird.
So let's start talking about some of the treatment. You've had opportunity to process this, I guess, in a way. And then they give you the treatment options. One of them is you have to have chemotherapy.
Yes.
In that space.
Yes, so I had chemo first. They often will do that these days with it first to shrink the tumour as much as they can. So it was about 16 rounds of chemo. It would take about 5 months.
Wow.
And yeah, one of them was very aggressive every fortnight, and the other was once a week for 12 weeks. And yeah, it was
Gemma,
tough.
Can you share what that means to your body? In the fact, you talked about the fact that you're a fit, healthy girl, you looked after yourself, and then a treatment is ripping your body apart.
Yeah, it's funny. Something is there to help you. It's aggressive. So, I lost my hair. I was on some steroids to help and whatnot. And surprisingly, I was actually really hungry whilst on chemo. A lot of people are really sick. I never was, which was a huge blessing. I just felt really, really tired. I would have days. I was never one of these people who couldn't get out of bed, but I had sort of 3 foggy days after the first lot of chemo, a few days after, and I just couldn't concentrate on anything. I think I just sat on the couch. The TV was on. I wasn't even paying attention to it. I was just staring at it. And I didn't realise how soon it would feel to not feel like myself.
Gemma, your relationship with God in this time, would it be fair to say that it took a bit of a beating? Yeah,
it did. I'd grown up in a Christian family, been to church my entire life, been to Christian schools, and I thought my faith was fairly strong, although I never felt like I'd really struggled, and I knew that one day I would. And I always wondered how I'd feel and react in that moment. And it certainly was a struggle at times where I was just, God, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? How dare you do this to me? But it was actually my surgeon who, the first time I met him, he said, this is going to trash the rest of your year. And to hear that was really hard. And a few weeks later, I was reflecting on that, and I thought about the old adage, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to find the treasure in this trashy moment. And, even the day after I was diagnosed, I'd had a shower, which was probably a lot longer than normal, just wishing that I could wash it away. And I had music playing, and it was King of My Heart, which the chorus just says, "You are good, you are good." And I sang along to it. It was probably the hardest song I have ever sung because of what was going on. But above it all, God was good, and I was very determined to focus on that He was good.
Pretty tough to sing the words, "You are good," a day after you've been diagnosed with cancer. Gemma, you were 26 or 27 at the time?
27.
27 at the time. As I said, you'd been married for a number of years. A family is somewhere along the lines there. Was there a fear straight away at that space of, will I be able to have a family? Will I grow up to see children? Will I be able to raise children?
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually probably one of the hardest things, was because of the chemo and because it's very aggressive. That we just didn't know. We don't know what will happen in that space. And, it's been really hard, and that's something that does harass me a fair bit. And actually it was Alicia who earlier this year, she was talking about Elisha, and, that then when you focus on something and let it harass you, it just, it really disrupts you. And, when we focus on God, it's amazing what can happen.
Gemma, I'm going to get to the box in a moment, but I want to talk to you about a huge challenge for you, because the chemo was bad enough, but then as a woman, you chose to have the surgery of the removal of both your breasts. And I think you used the terms with me, there was nothing scarier than the unknown.
Yes, absolutely. With every test that I've had, regardless of what the actual result was, that waiting and not knowing was just really, really scary. Not knowing how bad the cancer was, and not knowing how I'd react to chemo, and how I'd feel after surgery. All those things were just really, really difficult. And yeah, I just had no idea.
Gemma, you shared with me very courageously that you went home and looked in the mirror and hated yourself.
Yeah. I did not want to look in the mirror, particularly after I lost my hair. I felt ashamed, even though there was nothing that I had done to feel ashamed about. Even getting undressed in front of Troy, I think most of the time I would turn my back because I didn't want him to see me. And thankfully after surgery, all that, I gradually felt whole again.
Did you feel guilty? Did you feel like, have I done something wrong?
Yeah, I did. When something bad happens to you, you expect that it's, as a consequence for something else you've done. But it's not like that with a lot of health things. Sometimes they happen regardless of, how fit you've been, how careful you've been. A number of young women in particular, they've got certain genetic markers that are the cause of breast cancer and ovarian cancer. I had none of that. I will probably never know why, medically speaking, I got cancer, but I did. I wasn't too young. It's something that doesn't discriminate.
In your year that the doctors said was going to be trashed, I think it's a bit of an understatement, to be honest. You're facing the chemo, you're facing the significant surgery, you're facing all of the shame that you talked about, all of these things here. You're facing an unknown future as to what that looks like for kids. You're facing an unknown future as to what that looks like for your health. You've got everything stacked up against you. Everything is stacked up against you. You wrote words of thanks to God.
I did.
How do you do that?
It wasn't always easy. I was very determined, though, that in amongst it all, I would find the things that I was thankful for. And so I wrote...
Can you share a couple with us?
Yeah, I can share a few. I wrote a few... I had little note paper, and every day I would, or almost every day, I would just write even just one thing that I was thankful for. So sometimes it was the fact that I was feeling okay to do housework, or that I could cook Troy dinner instead of him cooking for me.
So you're heading into a chemo treatment, you're heading into a surgery, into an unknown future, and you're writing these notes.
Yes.
Thank you to God.
Yes.
Wow.
There's a lot in here. I think this was one of the first ones that I wrote on the 28th of June last year. And I said, I'm thankful for people equipped by God to work in health, drugs to fight this stupid cancer, a family that prays, and Troy. And some days all I could write on there was Troy because he did such a good job of looking after me. And so another one, 4th of October, Troy's 33 years, and I happened to have lunch with Stevie that day.
Come on.
And so there's just a lot in here that sometimes they're really insignificant in terms of our day-to-day, laughing with Troy. But
how do you laugh in this time, Gemma?
It wasn't easy, but I had really good people around me who were praying for me and who would make inappropriate jokes. I've got a pretty dry sense of humour, so having a laugh like that was quite good. One of my colleagues, he'd be like, oh, this needs to be done. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I've got cancer. And he was like, Gemma, stop it. But it actually was a huge help just to be able to laugh in the face of cancer. It's not always something that we can do because it is heavy, but, God actually made us to laugh. And, that's something I love doing, is laughing.
Let's walk through the journey. You've had the surgery, you've had the chemo. When you go back into that doctor's surgery, the same doctor's surgery where 16 months earlier they tell you that your body is riddled with cancer. When you walk in there later on for more results, tell us the feeling of what it was post the surgery.
Yeah, it was actually the cancer centre that I went to for that, but I had no idea I was going to find out any news that day. It was a week after my surgery, and I was just there for another treatment that I was continuing. And, I think we had a few other appointments that day. And so, I was like, can my oncologist, can she come and see me at the day hospital because I've got this other appointment? And so anyway, she came over and had this big smile on her face and was like, you've had a complete pathological response. And I was like, okay. I don't do medical speak at all. And I thought she was talking about the lymph nodes that were taken a few weeks earlier, that they came back clear. And she was like, oh, that's not the reaction I was expecting. And I'm like, oh? She's like, it's gone. The cancer was all gone when you had surgery. I was like, oh, that's good.
All gone.
All gone. It was completely gone.
So you are cancer-free?
I am cancer-free.
What'd you say to God?
Oh, lots of thank yous. And it was a funny day actually because it was about the 28th of January, I think, 29th. And, we'd gone to this appointment, and then we went to my parents' house on the way home and, told them, and it was all very exciting. But it was a hard moment too because my grandmother, who was 96, would have been her 97th birthday today, and she was in hospital. She didn't have long left. And it was a real blessing because my sister was over there and she had me on loudspeaker. And so I was able to tell Grandma, I'm cancer-free, Grandma. Her prayers had been answered. She'd lost her mother to breast cancer when she was 13. And so I know that she prayed over me every day. And for me to be able to have that really special moment with her, she wasn't responding to much, but apparently she had a real definite grunt at that time. And it was almost like she was waiting for that news before she went home to Jesus.
There was also, and he doesn't know we're going to talk about this, but Troy suffered horrendous migraines for a long period of time.
Yes. Yeah, he would get them once a month, once every 2 months. Often it would just be from the stress of work and all that kind of, life. And actually the day that I had my first biopsy, my mum took me because Troy had a migraine that day. But since that day, I can actually count on one hand the number of migraines that he has had. And that's 18 months.
Come on. So there's an author by the names of James Hudson Taylor, and he says this. He says there are 3 stages in the work of God: impossible, difficult, done. And I think that sums up your story pretty well. Impossible, difficult, done. That sums up our God, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It really does. And, even beyond the great miracle of healing that I had, I think the miracles that were evident through my life, both before cancer and along the way, it wasn't necessarily the healing that was the miracle. It was the fact that I could give thanks for a great family, a great boss, great friends, this beautiful place that we live, all the miracles in amongst all that.
Gemma, we're going to, and we are very cognizant about the fact, we said at the start, that there would be many here who are suffering from chronic conditions, diseases of some form, maybe mental illnesses or anything around that space. And we were very cognizant about the way that we would present this and do this. And something I know that the heart of you to share who's gone through this is that whole journey of being able to give thanks. And in a moment, we're going to be taking some communion, because that was a really important thing too, to be able to actually give thanks to God with communion, because it is one of the greatest ways that we can actually do something, is to give thanks. And so before you do that, Gemma, because I know it's on your heart, is that you're just going to share briefly as they're going to start passing around the communion in a moment. And as the attendants just start passing it around, we want to encourage you to just hold it, just to hold the elements for a moment. Gemma's going to share, and then she's going to share for 1 or 2 minutes on that. And then she's going to sing a song. And the song goes by the title, I'll Give Thanks. And it's a song that Gemma shared with me, that in the darkest times, in the toughest times, in the times when she physically couldn't see a light, she was able to somehow get these words out, that I will give thanks. What I'm going to ask us to do is today, as I said, I come in expectation, believing that a God who goes from the impossible, difficult, done. And so, as our worship team are going to come back up now, I'm going to ask us as the offering as the communion goes around, just to hold it in your hands, just to stay seated, just to have a reflective time as Gemma will share, and then she's going to sing straight away. And then I'm going to ask, as you've taken your elements, when you feel a time, I'm going to encourage you to stand. Just when it feels right between you and God, just to be able to stand. And then I'm going to ask you to do one other thing. I'm really encourage you here, try not to get distracted. because I believe there is a breakthrough coming. And it may not be for you, it may be for someone that you know. That if you are praying and believing for a breakthrough, a miracle to occur in your life, I'm going to come and ask you to stand on the front when you feel comfortable. Gemma's going to sing the song when you feel comfortable. That breakthrough might be a physical healing, it might be a mental healing, it may be a relationship breakthrough that you're just praying for. The words will be up on the screen. When you feel comfortable, just be able to sing them, because we really want to be able to pray for them. I saw Gary here today. Gary, I'm going to come and get you in a minute, because I want to pray for you, because I believe there is a breakthrough in your life coming. We don't know what it is, but we believe there is a breakthrough coming. And so I just want to encourage, just hold on to the elements. Gemma's just going to share for just 1 minute, and then she's going to sing. And then when you feel comfortable, just stand on your feet. And if you're praying for a breakthrough in your life, whatever it might be, you might be like the woman who had an illness for 12 years. It might be that you've had a challenge here. Then just come forward, because we would love to pray for you. I'm really going to encourage, if you're on a service team, do not go out the doors. The kids will wait, because we want to give time for God to work in this space. Thanks, Gemma.